Forget what the history books told you. The Wild West wasn't some lawless free-for-all where anyone could carry anything they wanted. Towns passed ordinances, states enacted restrictions, and lawmakers tried desperately to control the chaos with bans on everything from sawed-off shotguns to fighting knives so brutal they sparked legislative panic. But cowboys, outlaws, gamblers, and even lawmen carried these forbidden weapons anyway. Because when your life depended on steel and lead, a piece of paper in some courthouse meant nothing. Today we're uncovering 15 weapons the frontier tried to suppress, but couldn't. Number 15. The sawed-off shotgun, the street sweeper. They couldn't stop. Picture a weapon so devastating at close range that a single trigger pull could clear a doorway of 3 men at once. The sawed-off shotgun wasn't just a firearm. It was a room-clearing nightmare that turned buckshot into a wall of death. By cutting the barrel down to 12 or 14 inches and hacking off the stock, outlaws and stagecoach robbers transformed standard hunting shotguns into compact instruments of terror. The shortened barrel spread shot patterns so wide that aiming became almost optional. At 10 feet, a blast could shred multiple targets simultaneously. Local ordinances in towns like Dodge City and Abilene specifically prohibited sawed-off shotguns within city limits. Territorial laws attempted to regulate barrel lengths to prevent exactly this kind of modification, but enforcement was a joke. Any man with a hacksaw could convert a legal shotgun into a banned weapon in under an hour. Stagecoach bandits favored them for their intimidation factor alone. The gaping twin muzzles of a coach gun cut down to pistol size made victims comply instantly. Wells Fargo guards reported that outlaws wielding sawed-offs rarely needed to fire at all. The sight alone convinced passengers to hand over the strongbox. The problem was simple. How do you regulate a modification anyone can make? You couldn't, and so the sawed-off remained the outlaw's weapon of choice for close-range work throughout the 1870s and 1880s. Laws be damned. Number 14. The Bowie knife, the blade that terrified lawmakers. Long before legislators worried about six-shooters, they were terrified of a different weapon entirely. The Bowie knife sparked some of the first weapons restrictions in American history, and for good reason. This wasn't a tool. It was a sword disguised as a hunting blade, named after Jim Bowie, whose 1827 sandbar fight turned him into a frontier legend. The knife featured a blade anywhere from 9 to 15 inches long with a distinctive clip point and heavy crossguard. In skilled hands, it could disembowel a man, deflect a sword, or be thrown with lethal accuracy. Bowie himself reportedly killed multiple attackers with his blade, even after being shot and stabbed. The carnage wasn't limited to Bowie. Duels fought with these massive knives became so common and so brutal that states began passing laws. Alabama banned concealed Bowie knives in 1837. Tennessee followed with restrictions that same year. By the 1840s, Arkansas, Georgia, and Virginia had all enacted laws against carrying these blades concealed or openly in certain areas. Did anyone care? Absolutely not. Gamblers strapped them under coats. Cowboys wore them on belts despite town ordinances. The Bowie became a symbol of frontier independence, and no law was going to change that. Surviving specimens in the Alamo Museum and private collections show blades worn smooth from decades of illegal daily carry. The Bowie knife was banned early and often across the South and West, but it never left anyone's hip. Number 13. The Pepperbox Revolver, the pocket cannon no one could control. Imagine holding a firearm with 4, 5, or 6 barrels clustered together like a cylinder of death, each one loaded and ready to fire in rapid sequence. The Pepperbox Revolver promised overwhelming firepower in a pocket-sized package. What it delivered was unpredictable chaos. Popular in the 1830s through the 1850s, Pepperbox revolvers used multiple rotating barrels instead of a single barrel with a revolving cylinder. Each barrel was its own chamber. The result was a heavy, awkward pistol that could unleash tremendous firepower, but with accuracy so poor that hitting a barn door at 15 feet was an achievement. Several territories and towns restricted Pepperbox pistols, specifically because of their tendency toward accidental discharge. The complex firing mechanisms often misfired. Worse, the guns occasionally chain-fired, setting off multiple barrels simultaneously in a catastrophic blast. One documented incident in Missouri described a gambler's pepperbox discharging all 4 barrels at once, killing the man across the table and wounding the gambler's own hand. San Francisco's 1850s concealed weapons ordinances included pepper boxes by name, recognizing their popularity among gold rush miners and their potential for mayhem. But miners carried them anyway. In cramped saloons and tent cities, a pepper box offered the comforting illusion of overwhelming firepower, even if it was as dangerous to the shooter as to the target. Most pepper boxes were retired when Colt's reliable revolvers dominated the market. But during their heyday, these banned pocket cannons armed thousands of frontiersmen who gambled that the firepower was worth the risk. Number 12. Concealed Derringers, the gentleman's illegal insurance. The Derringer was designed for one purpose: killing at arm's length and disappearing into a pocket before anyone knew where the shot came from. Henry Derringer's original Philadelphia Derringer, a single-shot .41 caliber pocket pistol, spawned countless imitations and became the go-to weapon for gamblers, prostitutes, and anyone who valued concealment over firepower. The problem was that nearly every frontier town banned concealed weapons, and the Derringer existed specifically to be concealed. Tombstone's Ordinance No. 9, passed in 1881, made it illegal to carry any deadly weapon concealed without a permit. Dodge City had similar laws as early as 1876. Deadwood, Abilene, and Wichita all prohibited hidden firearms. The Derringer violated every one of these laws by design. Gamblers slipped them into vest pockets and boot tops. Saloon girls tucked them into corsets. John Wilkes Booth famously used a Philadelphia Derringer to assassinate President Lincoln, cementing the weapon's reputation as the tool of cowards and assassins. Frontier newspapers regularly reported shootings involving Derringers produced seemingly from thin air. The Remington Double Derringer, introduced in 1866, became especially popular. Its over-under two-shot configuration doubled the firepower while remaining small enough to palm completely. Law enforcement confiscated hundreds, but for every one seized, a dozen more remained hidden. Surviving examples rest in the Autry Museum and National Firearms Collection, often still tucked into decayed vest linings. They remind us that the most dangerous weapon in the Old West wasn't always the one you could see. Number 11. The cane gun, the walking stick of death. For the gentleman who wanted to stroll down Main Street fully armed without anyone knowing, the cane gun was the ultimate deception. It looked like an ordinary walking stick. It fired like a rifle. Cane guns concealed their true nature inside hollowed-out shafts, usually chambered in small calibers like .22 or .32. The trigger might be hidden in the handle, activated by twisting the grip or pressing a concealed button. Some designs unscrewed to reveal short pistol barrels. Others fired straight through the ferrule at the cane's tip. These weapons fell under concealed carry prohibitions across the West, but the laws specifically targeting them were even stricter. Because a cane gun was inherently deceptive, designed to fool anyone looking at it, several territories classified them as assassination weapons and banned them outright. Remington produced the most popular American models during the 1870s, marketing them to travelers who wanted protection without visible armament. Gamblers and confidence men favored them for entering establishments where open carry was prohibited. A man could check his revolver at the door while keeping his cane at his side. But the cane gun's greatest strength was also its weakness. The small calibers necessary to fit inside a walking stick lacked stopping power. One shot was often all you got, and it had better count. Still, for men who live by deception, one hidden shot was enough. Museum collections, including pieces at the Cody Firearms Museum, preserve these disguised weapons as reminders that the frontier's most dangerous men didn't always look armed. Number 10. The Apache Knuckle Duster, the unholy trinity. What happens when you combine brass knuckles, a folding knife, and a Pepperbox Revolver into a single weapon? You get the Apache Knuckle Duster, a brutal combination piece so inherently illegal, it was banned almost everywhere it appeared. Developed in France and named after the Parisian street gangs who favored it, the Apache Revolver featured a cylinder mounted between a set of brass knuckles, with a folding blade that swung out from the frame. No barrel, no trigger guard, just raw, close-quarters lethality designed for back-alley brawls. American versions and imports began appearing in Western cities during the 1870s. Police departments and town marshals immediately recognized the threat. combination weapons were explicitly banned in multiple jurisdictions because they served no purpose except violence at intimate range. The Apache's lack of a barrel meant accuracy was non-existent beyond a few feet, but that was the point. This wasn't a dueling weapon. It was a murder tool. Punch with the knuckles, stab with the blade, shoot point blank into the body. In cramped saloon fights or ambush situations, nothing was deadlier. Gamblers and criminals treasured them precisely because they were banned. Owning one signaled a certain kind of man, someone who expected close, ugly confrontations and prepared accordingly. Law enforcement seized these weapons whenever found, yet they kept appearing. Surviving examples are rare and highly collectible. Most were confiscated and destroyed, but the few that remain in private collections and museums like the NRA National Firearms Collection testify to the frontier's willingness to embrace forbidden weapons when survival demanded it. Number 9. The palm pistol, the invisible killer. If the Derringer was small, the palm pistol was nearly invisible. Designed to fit entirely within a closed fist, these weapons represented the ultimate in concealed lethality, and that's exactly why they were banned. The most famous design was the Minneapolis Firearms Company's Protector, patented in 1882. This bizarre revolver held 7.32 caliber rounds in a flat, circular turret that sat flat against the palm. A squeeze of the hand rotated the cylinder and fired. No visible barrel, no hammer to cock, just a fist-sized disc of steel that looked like nothing until it killed you. Town ordinances that prohibited concealed weapons obviously applied to palm pistols, but several jurisdictions went further. Because these firearms were impossible to detect during searches, some territories classified them alongside other assassination tools and banned possession entirely. The palm pistol found favor among gamblers, businessmen carrying large sums, and anyone who expected betrayal at close range. Wells Fargo agents reportedly carried them as backup weapons. A man could shake your hand and kill you in the same motion. The design's weakness was its caliber. The 32 rounds lacked stopping power, and the squeeze firing mechanism made accuracy a serious challenge. But for point-blank work, that hardly mattered. If you were using a palm pistol, your target was close enough to touch. Fewer than 15,000 protectors were ever made, and surviving specimens command high prices among collectors. Most were confiscated or discarded when their owners faced legal consequences. But during their brief production run, they armed the West's most cautious and most dangerous men alike. Number 8. The Bridgeport Rig. Too dangerous to be legal. Some weapons were banned, not because they were too deadly to the enemy, but because they were too deadly to the man carrying them. The Bridgeport Rig was exactly that kind of disaster. In 1882, Connecticut inventor Louis S. Flatow received U.S. patent number 25640 for what he called a pistol holder. The idea was speed. His design used a spring steel clip that clamped around the trigger guard of a Colt single-action army, letting the revolver hang naked on the belt. No leather, no safety strap. The hammer sat back, the trigger exposed, ready to twist, cock, and fire in a single motion. It was the first mass-market attempt at a speed holster, and it was a catastrophe. Dealers like Hartley and Graham of New York listed it briefly in their 1884 catalog, advertising instant readiness for the frontier marksman. A few scouts and lawmen tested it. Within months came the accidents: a stumble, a startled horse, a man brushing against a doorway. Each could set off a round. One Kansas newspaper in 1885 described a deputy shooting himself in the thigh while mounting a wagon. By the late 1880s, the Bridgeport Rig had vanished from catalogs. Dodge City and Tombstone ordinances discouraged open rig carry altogether, partly in response to devices like this. Only a handful survive today in the Cody Firearms Museum, an NRA National Firearms Collection, their steel clips warped from use. Hollywood later revived the silhouette for movie prop quick-draw rigs, turning a banned failure into screen legend. But the real gunfighters already knew the lesson. Speed means nothing if your holster kills you first. Number 7. Belt-buckle Derringers, the hidden last resort. When every other weapon had been confiscated, when town marshals had searched your pockets and checked your boots, you still had one option left. The belt-buckle Derringer sat right in front of them, disguised as an ordinary piece of hardware. These ingenious weapons concealed a small-caliber pistol, usually a single-shot .22 or .32, inside a functional belt buckle. The barrel faced forward. A small trigger or release button sat hidden beneath the buckle's face. A man could walk through a checkpoint completely unarmed according to any search, then still fire a round into anyone who got too close. Belt buckle guns fell under the same concealed weapon prohibitions as Derringers and palm pistols, but they were even more explicitly banned in jurisdictions that recognized them. Because they were inherently deceptive, several territories classified them as assassination tools, alongside cane guns and sleeve pistols. Gamblers and confidence men loved them. So did anyone expecting betrayal during a business transaction. The psychological advantage was real. Even if your enemy knew you were dangerous, they couldn't find the weapon. That uncertainty could end a confrontation before it started. The design's weakness was obvious. One shot, tiny caliber, almost impossible to aim. But for point-blank range in a desperate situation, none of that mattered. It was the last resort that everyone banned, and no one stopped carrying. Original belt-buckle Derringers are rare. Most were confiscated and melted down. Those that survive in private collections remain functional reminders that the frontier's most dangerous men hid their weapons in plain sight. Number 6. Sleeve guns, the assassin's secret. When surprise was everything, the sleeve gun delivered it with lethal efficiency. Strapped to the forearm and hidden beneath a coat or shirt, this weapon could appear in a man's hand as if conjured from thin air. Sleeve guns operated on simple spring mechanisms. A flick of the wrist or a squeeze of a hidden button released the pistol from its concealed holster, sliding it down into the waiting palm. The best designs, often custom-made by machinists and gunsmiths, moved so smoothly that the gun appeared to materialize from nowhere. These weapons were explicitly banned in virtually every frontier jurisdiction. Their sole purpose was assassination or ambush. No legitimate self-defense use could be claimed for a weapon designed entirely around deception and surprise. Town marshals and sheriffs knew the threat they posed. Any man caught wearing a sleeve rig faced serious consequences, but proving someone carried one was nearly impossible without a thorough search, and most towns lacked the resources or will for that level of enforcement. Professional gamblers, hired killers, and confidence men relied on sleeve guns as their ultimate edge. They could enter a saloon unarmed, pass any inspection, then draw and fire before their opponent knew what happened. The designs varied widely. Some used Derringers, others small revolvers. Custom versions were built to individual arm measurements, ensuring smooth deployment. A poorly fitted sleeve gun could jam at the worst possible moment, so those who carried them invested in quality. Few surviving examples exist, and most are in private collections. Their very nature meant they were confiscated and destroyed when found. But during the frontier era, the sleeve gun represented the ultimate in forbidden concealed weaponry. If you've made it this far, you're clearly interested in the weapons history tried to bury. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss when we dig up more of the frontier's forbidden gear. Number 5. Brass knuckle pistols, the brawler's best friend. When a gunfight turned into a fistfight, or a fistfight into a gunfight, the brass knuckle pistol handled both without switching weapons. That versatility is exactly why they were banned almost everywhere. These hybrid weapons combined a small caliber pistol, usually a Derringer-style design, with a set of brass knuckles forged into the grip. The barrel extended from between the fingers. The knuckles protected the hand and delivered crushing blows. A man could punch, then shoot, or shoot, then punch, all with the same piece of hardware. The most famous American design was the James Reed My Friend Knuckle Duster, produced in the 1860s and 1870s. Chambered in 22 or 32 caliber with multiple barrels, it looked like something from a nightmare. The weapon served no purpose except close-range violence, and legislators recognized that immediately. Combination weapons fell under enhanced restrictions in multiple territories. They couldn't claim legitimate hunting or sporting use. They existed purely for combat, and brutal combat at that. Possession alone could result in arrest in towns with strict weapons ordinances. But saloon brawlers and street fighters carried them anyway. When a card game turned ugly, when a disagreement in an alley escalated, the brass knuckle pistol settled things permanently. One moment you're throwing punches, the next you're firing into someone's chest. No need to transition between weapons. Surviving examples in collections like the NRA National Firearms Collection show extensive wear on both the knuckle surfaces and the firing mechanisms. These weren't safe queens. They were working tools of violence that their owners used, despite every law forbidding them. Number 4. Ring guns, the finger of death. If palm pistols and belt-buckle Derringers represented concealment, ring guns took the concept to its absolute extreme. A single-shot firearm disguised as a piece of jewelry, worn on the finger, capable of killing at arm's length. Ring guns were exactly what they sound like. Tiny pistols, usually no larger than an actual ring, chambered in minuscule calibers like 2mm or 4mm. The barrel extended along the finger. A small trigger or squeeze mechanism sat against the palm. The entire weapon disappeared beneath a glove, or simply looked like an oversized piece of eccentric jewelry. These weapons were banned by name in several jurisdictions as assassination tools. Their only purpose was surprise killing at point-blank range. They couldn't be used for self-defense in any practical sense. They couldn't be aimed. They held one shot. They existed to kill someone who didn't know you were armed, and legislators understood that perfectly. European manufacturers produced most ring guns, with some appearing in the American West through imports. Gamblers, poisoners, and spies favored them for their absolute concealability. A man could be searched thoroughly, stripped of every weapon, and still carry death on his finger. The ring gun's weakness was its caliber. The tiny rounds could kill, but only with precise shot placement. A gut shot might not prove immediately fatal, but for a shot to the eye or throat at contact range, that hardly mattered. Surviving ring guns are exceptionally rare and valuable. Most were confiscated and destroyed. They remain perhaps the most extreme expression of the frontier's obsession with hidden weapons, banned almost universally and ignored by anyone willing to pay the price. Number 3, the Volcanic Pistol, the explosive experiment. Before Winchester became a legend, they created a lever-action pistol so dangerous and unpredictable that it earned restrictions for its ammunition alone. The Volcanic Pistol promised revolutionary firepower. It delivered explosive unreliability. Developed in the 1850s by Smith, Wesson, and later the Volcanic Repeating Arms Company, these lever-action pistols used rocket ball ammunition. Each round was a hollow-base bullet containing its own propellant and primer. No separate powder charge, no conventional cartridge. The entire concept was revolutionary. The problem was the execution. Rocket ball ammunition was weak, unreliable, and occasionally explosive in ways no one intended. The propellant charges varied wildly in power. Some rounds barely exited the barrel. Others exploded in the chamber. Frontier shooters, who trusted their lives to volcanics, found themselves holding weapons that couldn't be counted on. Several territories restricted the sale of rocket ball ammunition specifically, recognizing its dangers. The weapons themselves fell under general ordinances regarding unsafe firearms. Gunsmiths refused to work on them. Merchants stopped stocking the ammunition. Yet the concept's appeal remained. A lever-action pistol offering repeating firepower was irresistible to frontiersmen who'd grown up with single-shot weapons. Those willing to gamble on the ammunition carried volcanics as backup weapons, accepting the risk for the theoretical advantage. The design's DNA lived on. The volcanic's lever-action mechanism evolved into the Henry rifle, and eventually the Winchester 1866, proving that the concept was sound even if the execution was flawed. But during its own era, the volcanic pistol was a banned experiment that armed the frontier's biggest gamblers, the men willing to bet their lives that this time, the round would fire correctly. Number 2, any firearm inside town limits. The law, everyone broke. Here's the truth Hollywood never tells you. Walking down the main street of most frontier towns with a 6-shooter on your hip would have gotten you arrested. The armed cowboy strolling through Dodge City or Tombstone is pure myth. In reality, those towns banned open carry entirely, and almost everyone ignored it. Dodge City's firearms ordinance, enacted in 1876, prohibited carrying any deadly weapon within city limits. Tombstone's Ordinance No. 9, passed in 1881, made it illegal to carry firearms or knives openly, or concealed without a permit. Visitors were expected to check their guns with the sheriff or at a hotel desk, just like you'd check a coat. These weren't suggestions. They were enforced. The famous signs. Reading "No guns in town" were real. Fines ranged from $5 to $25. Serious money in an era when a cowboy earned $30 a month. Repeat offenders faced jail time. but enforcement was selective and inconsistent. Cowboys coming off cattle drives ignored the signs. Gamblers kept Derringers hidden. Even lawmen bent the rules when they felt threatened. The OK Corral gunfight happened in Tombstone precisely because the Earps were trying to enforce the town's weapons ordinance against the Clantons and McClorys. The gap between law and practice defined frontier life. Towns wanted peace and commerce. They knew that armed men meant gunfights, and gunfights were bad for business. But disarming a frontier population raised on the idea that weapons meant survival was impossible. Historical records from town courts show hundreds of firearms violations. Most resulted in small fines. Some were dismissed entirely. The law existed on paper, but the frontier existed on its own terms. That's why so many famous gunfights happened just outside town limits, where the ordinances stopped applying. Inside the line, you risked arrest. Outside it, you risked everything else. Number 1. The knife gun, the ultimate forbidden hybrid. When legislators tried to ban weapons, they usually focused on specific categories: knives, pistols, concealed weapons. But what happens when a single weapon combines all three? You get the knife gun, the ultimate forbidden hybrid that violated every restriction simultaneously. Knife guns were exactly what they sound like: full-sized fighting knives with pistol barrels built into the handles or blades. A man could stab, then shoot, or shoot, then stab. The weapon served as a blade for close work, and a firearm for finishing or creating distance. Some designs placed the barrel alongside the blade, firing forward. Others built the pistol into the handle, firing backward as a surprise. These weapons violated concealed weapons laws because the pistol wasn't visible. They violated knife restrictions in territories that had banned fighting blades. They violated ordinances against combination weapons because that's exactly what they were. Owning one was essentially illegal everywhere, and that's exactly why certain men carried them. Custom gunsmiths and knife makers built these hybrids to individual order. No major manufacturer dared produce them commercially. The liability was too great, the legal risk too obvious. But for customers willing to pay, specialty craftsmen created knife guns of remarkable quality. Full-tang blades with rifled barrels, single-shot handles that fired 32 or 41 caliber rounds, folding knives that concealed tiny derringers. Confederate officers during the Civil War carried some of the finest examples. After the war, those weapons moved west with their owners, where they became prized possessions among gamblers and gunslingers who expected the worst. The knife gun represented the last resort of the last resort, a weapon for men who planned for betrayal. Law enforcement confiscated these weapons whenever found, and usually destroyed them. Their very existence was evidence of intent. Surviving examples are exceptionally rare, scattered through private collections and specialized museums. Each one represents a piece of frontier defiance, a weapon so comprehensively illegal that carrying it meant accepting any consequence for the advantage it provided. The knife gun embodied everything the frontier tried to ban and everything the frontier refused to surrender. It was the final word in forbidden weapons, the tool that proved no law could overcome a man's determination to survive. 15 weapons the West tried to ban. 15 weapons the West carried anyway. From sawed-off shotguns to knife guns, from palm pistols to simple six-shooters inside town limits, every weapon on this list faced legal restrictions somewhere on the frontier. Legislators passed ordinances. Sheriffs posted signs. Courts levied fines. None of it mattered. The truth is that the Wild West wasn't lawless. It was selectively lawful. Towns wanted order. Territories wanted commerce. But the men and women who survived the frontier understood a different reality. Laws were paper. Steel was certain. And when your life depended on being armed, no ordinance was going to change your mind. These banned weapons tell the real story of frontier survival, not the Hollywood version with gleaming gun belts and showdowns at noon. The real version, where hidden derringers settled card games, where illegal knives saved lives, and where the most dangerous men carried weapons specifically because they were forbidden. Every scratch in that confiscated steel, every worn grip on a seized pistol, records a man who chose survival over law. That was the West's truth. Practical, defiant, and armed despite everything. If you've made it this far, you've seen what the history books left out. Subscribe for more deep dives into the weapons that armed America's most dangerous era. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.